Hey free-to-play gang, welcome back to another video. This is going to be a quick one. I apologize for uploading a video so late. I got hard stuck at work today. Okay, anyway, for today's video, we're going to talk a little bit about Raven just to get a brief idea of how she works right now. And for the most part, she is good, but she is not as broken as most people think that she is, in my opinion. So let's just briefly take a look at what an R0 Raven looks like. So her third skill, Sleipnir, dispels all debuffs from herself, gains speed up, okay. Dispels all enemy buffs, cannot be resisted if the target is slower than herself, which she will be because she has the speed up buff. So for the most part, if you make her super fast, she is guaranteed to remove all buffs on all the enemies and then attacks all enemies afterwards. Now the damage is 120% attack, each speed grants extra damage and inflicts defense down for 2 turns afterwards with 100% proc chance. And somewhere I think like her R6 or something like that, she will have the same effect for her defense break, so the defense break cannot be resisted, which is really good for a Shimmer type as well, but obviously getting multiple copies of her is a dream. Now, second skill Sunset performs a pursuit attack when enemies without buffs take a hit, triggers only once per turn, and attacks all enemies twice upon a pursuit. Damage per hit is 45% of attack, and if an enemy is not buffed, you deal extra damage as well, and each speed also further grants additional damage. Now furthermore, each hit will also reduce the enemy's max HP capacity, which is 100% of damage dealt based on this skill itself, just the Sunset skill. And finally, when an ally makes any enemy buff and early, basically when we strip their buffs, Sunset's cooldown will then be reduced by 1 turn, and this skill has a cooldown of 3 turns, so it's quite spammable, but the thing is you can't actually use it actively. You have to rely on other attacks or your own attacks in order for you to cast it. And finally, for our first skill, Eternal Comet, nothing much has changed. Attacks twice, each hit has a chance of stealing buff, and upon successfully stealing a buff, you then inflict Sear. If there is no buff to steal, you will not inflict Sear. But of course, each speed also grants extra damage, so she is going to be a speed scaling Esper right now, which for the most part is not bad, but let's take a look at her in practice. So for the time being, I'm actually going to reduce the level of all the enemies so that we can just use her solo here, just so that we have an understanding of what her combo seems to look like. So we can throw our third skill, and because the enemies are not buffed, we will then immediately... Okay, so that actually brings me to the first point, which is one of the issues that she has, which is, if you notice, we didn't use our second skill. The reason for that is because we killed the enemies too quickly, and that actually triggered her Sunset even though it was not casted. So our primary target got killed, and therefore we were not able to Sunset afterwards. So let's just do this one more time with the same setup. Now this is a huge letdown, by the way. It really sucks a lot. Oh wait, hold on. Wait, he was our main target, right? So let's do this one more time. We kill everything else, and we do not even use our Sunset ability. Our Sunset goes straight into cooldown, which is so dumb, even though he was our primary target. So essentially, if you kill something, then your second skill will actually trigger, but it will not actually come out, which is completely stupid. Okay, so I went ahead to give the enemies a little bit more stats, just raise their levels a little bit so that hopefully they don't die right now. So we can use our third skill and combo into our second skill. So this is what it's going to look like. So we're going to defense break, and then follow up with a pursuit attack. Very, very nice. But this also leads me to a second problem, which is clearly you are using other damaging skills before you use your second skill, which reduces the enemy's max HP cap. So you're not going to benefit from the enemy's max HP cap going down because you have already dealt damage. So the damage that you did prior to the max HP cap being implemented is actually kind of like wasted in my opinion. So yeah, kind of yikes. Same issue with Yuhime. Now here's something else that I want to show you guys, which is just based on my test itself. So we're going to use an attack which will then trigger her second skill to take effect, right? So instantly she's going to use her second skill just because Unas used his third skill, which did some damage. And this will naturally raise the next question. What about Avatara? Will they obliterate Raven, right? Will they just Avatara proc? I'll get to that in just a little bit. So the thing is, right, another thing about her passive is that whenever we strip buffs, this skill's cooldown will actually be reduced by 1. So the thing is, now these enemies do not have any buffs, but what happens if we use our third skill? We are stripping buffs, but yet that does not actually count as stripping buffs. So Raven did not have her second skill cooldown reduced. So you have to strip buffs in order for this skill's cooldown to go down. And of course, it only triggers at most once per turn. But of course, that also means that you can have fun with like certain strategies. Like maybe you can do this, use her extra attack in, and then maybe you can cooldown reset herself. And now that when she takes a turn, she can throw her ultimate like that, and then she's gonna follow with yet another second skill basically. But for the most part, I feel like she is just more of a DPS expert right now with defense breaks, and she don't really need a lot of accuracy. So you can definitely build her like very speedy with a lot of offensive power, and she's going to be decent. I mean, she's going to be at least above average in terms of damage output, I would think, because her multipliers are decent and she scales off speed as well. But going back to the Avatara question, let's take a look at what happens when we trigger an Avatara proc. Let's watch this fight over here, and we're going to slow down the run. Okay, so now Una's attacks, well, it's a little bit too slow. Now, Gaia's Avatara procced here, but he did not Avatara proc just yet. When our Pursuit attack came out, then Gaia's Avatara procced onto Una's. So, the thing is, good news, your Raven will be protected from Avatara procs. Your Raven will not be destroyed by a slew of defensive experts with a lot of Avatara procs like Everett counterattacking, Tricky, Jin Yu Yao, Clara, you know, the same few, right? But one thing to take note of is if she last hit with her second skill and the enemy has an Ollie in their lineup, the Ollie is actually going to prioritize her as the target who killed their ally. So the Ollie is actually going to attack her afterwards, which will land a taunt if you are not immune. So for example, take a look at this fight over here. So I had to reset her skill so that she has second skill up again. So yeah, I couldn't reset herself, and now we take out this Leora over here, and Ollie actually threw his third skill at Raven. So while she is protected by Avatara procs, she is not going to be protected by Ollie's counter attack. But honestly, I think that's about it, right? So if you want to take a look at her resonances as well, her R2 allows her third skill to reset the cooldown of her second skill, which does help a lot in terms of rotation. So at the start, if you throw Una's third skill, for example, she's going to use her second skill instantly, so she's not going to have a second skill up. But when her turn comes around, she throws her third skill. That will also reset her second skill and then throw out her second skill at the same time, which is a pretty good synergy in my opinion. So it's a decent R2. And also I do feel like her R4 kind of helps a little bit, because at the start, when, like I said, right, you throw an early attack, like let's say you're using an Unas, you're using a Tia, you're using a Nusi, or you're using a Sienna, for example. Early attacks, that's going to trigger her second skill, and that's also going to increase the damage that her second skill does. And of course, her R6, this is where her defense down cannot be resisted if her speed is higher than the target's. But all in all, I do feel like her main thing right now is her second skill, where she's able to attack more often. But the thing is, in terms of damage output, it just goes up to 90%. It is not amazing, it's not crazy. We have tried Yuhime, and her multipliers are kind of garbage. And I can't help but feel that Sunset is pretty much similar in that regard as well, although she is a Shima type, so she has that one advantage. But one thing that I need to mention, which is something that most of you guys with Raven will also understand, is her ascensions are kind of bad. So she has HP percentage, she has accuracy, which is completely useless right now in my opinion. Like, she has to move away from accuracy. This needs to be like crit rate or crit damage, and her third skill, I mean her third ascension here, attack plus 20% is decent, but like I said, HP percentage, accuracy percentage, like what the hell, right? Alright, so that's it for this video. That's just like a brief overview of how Raven is right now. In terms of excitement, if I had a Raven, I probably wouldn't be like super excited. If I had a Tether, yes, I'll be even more excited. But this is not a jab at Raven users at all, okay? So if you have a Raven and you somehow manage to make her work, then yes, good for you. She's by no means bad or anything like that. I'm just trying to level your expectations a little bit about what Raven is capable of right now after the 3.2.6 update. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed today's content. If you have any other questions, feel free to leave it down in the comment section below. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. If you enjoyed today's content, don't forget to leave a thumbs up. It really helps the channel, and subscribe for more Dislyte content. Now with that said, this has been Derek Free to Play, and as always, I will see you in the next video.